Hi, Janine.
I am incredibly excited to talk about a couple of things that are incredibly passionate and close to my heart. Obviously, we're talking about International Women's Day and celebrating the role that women play across the world. Incredibly proud to work for the Uniting Church. It's a beautiful organisation that is slightly different, and for me, I think the most incredible difference is its inclusiveness and the empowerment of women as well. And you only need to look around the table. And why don't we go around and introduce ourselves? So I'm Janine Jackson. I'm the National Director for Frontier Services.
I'm Colleen Geyer. I'm the General Secretary for the Assembly.
I'm Claire Wendell. I am the National Director for Uniting Care Australia.
And I'm Surekha Gorringe, the National Director for Uniting World.
And these incredible women are women that I get to work with and all have, I think, a fairly important role in terms of the difference that the church is making across the country and internationally to leave the world in a better place. So, Colleen, maybe you can start by telling us a little bit about how the church was formed and when it was formed, about how it was actually done to be inclusive.
Thanks, Janine, and it's just great to be with everyone. We haven't seen each other for ages, so to be in the same place is really great. The Uniting Church began in 1977 with three churches coming together to form the Uniting Church. When it began, it had women could be ordained at that time and could be in leadership. Although only one of the national leaders at that time was a woman. That was the moderator of New South Wales Synod, Lillian Wells. But at the time, the church, when it started, did see that women being part of the church's work was important. And at the beginning, even had a quota on its committees. I think it was for a third had to be women. And interestingly, while we don't have that anymore, you'll see right across our church that in committees and boards, etc., we really do look for gender balance and recognise the importance of having both women and men as part of our decision-making bodies. Of course, women can also hold any position in the church and have been president and moderators and general secretaries. Currently, we have a woman president, Dr. Deirdre Palmer, and quite a few general secretaries, moderators, and of course women like us who are part of the other organisational parts of the Uniting Church and leading from there as well. I think over time, and we're quite young still, only about nearly 44 years, the church has really sought to see what does it mean to have leadership roles open to everyone. And then also to see women in those leadership roles. The other thing I think we really try hard at, and I'm very proud about, is that where we can and really to intentionally mentor up and coming next generation leaders as well, and to see what's possible for them into the future. That kind of balance and that understanding about what we all bring to the church is so important as we look to the future.
Oh, absolutely.
That's really interesting. No, I was just reflecting on that, Colleen, because as you know from my board meeting, this year is my 30-year anniversary in working as a woman within the Uniting Church.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
Congratulations!
And most of that time has been in leadership roles. In fact, only 1 year of that was not in a leadership role. And so I kind of reflect on my own journey of the 44 years. I've done 30 of those
Yes, exactly.
in the church. So I've seen a bit of change.
Yeah.
But always I've had women championing me in my journey. So
Same.
of course I started off when I was like 2.
Obviously.
But I've always had women championing me and supporting me in that, and I've seen that. I think what I've seen in that time is a real strengthening of women in leadership as well. I think there was some, it hasn't always been rosy. No. We're not painting a picture that it's all fabulous for every woman, but also, but I think I've seen that really grow. So, you know,
Yeah.
we have a president-elect.
Yes.
There's a woman.
That's right.
There's the 4 of us in leadership in the Assembly. So, and across our community services, there are many women in leadership, and of course, you know, in community services, it's a predominantly, in most of the areas, it's predominantly women in service anyway. But so yeah, I've reflected on my own leadership within the Uniting Church, and I know that as a woman, I've been very blessed in having great women around me to kind of get me to where I needed to go and progress my career really within that. So
That's so important, isn't it? That championing, being championed or being mentored, or, you know, being told or even oriented to what you find yourself in, so that you can understand that. And I think as leaders too, we should look for what are the opportunities that we have to do
to
that for
encourage
emerging
other
leaders.
young women. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think for me, there's two things. One is I think I've only worked for the Uniting Church for just over 5 years, so I'm a relative newbie. But for me,
The journey ahead, Sarah.
the first thing is that it's a point of pride. I just like boasting about how many women we have in leadership, because even though most of my networks are in the development network, and you know, they're quite a progressive bunch of people, but yet they don't model that women in leadership as well as we do sometimes. And so it's kind of cool being a church and being able to have a better modelling of women in leadership than secular organisations when we have such a bad rap for some things. But I think for me personally, for my journey, it's the Uniting Church's commitment and support to women in leadership is actually part of the Uniting Church's commitment to not being a place where everybody thinks the same.
Yes.
A genuine commitment to diversity and encouraging different voices and holding multiple views, so we don't become a bubble or a silo. And I think that, to me, is a powerfully attractive place. And so that you can always expect to encounter in a meeting a radically different point of view to, you know, one you might have encountered previously. So you're constantly learning and growing. And I think women are a really important part of setting that culture. I think that women bring, I guess we don't have that cultural baggage of privilege that assumes that our point of view is always the right one. So that openness to saying, oh gosh, I haven't thought of that before. Let's do it like that. You know, is lovely.
Yeah, that's true.
This actually goes to prove exactly why it's so beautiful. Clown, I just wanted to pick up a little bit on the point that you were making earlier, and talk about some of the incredible stuff that Uniting Care does for gender equality and inclusiveness, even as an organisation, and some of the stuff that's actually happening from a national perspective and the impact it's actually having for and with women, not just from a leadership perspective.
So I suppose from two ways. There's our community services network. So the service delivery we do on behalf of the church across the country is huge. We're the largest network of community services, so the Uniting Church should be very proud of the footprint that we've got. 50,000 staff, 30,000 volunteers, and if you look at the percentage of women in that, there would be at least 70%. So we're talking a very significant number of women, both in leadership and in serving roles, and in our child and family areas and early childhood, etc. It's probably even more. So the community services aspects obviously works with women in really disadvantaged circumstances every day. So we deliver services to women who are really if we look at the stats, in the poverty stats, women are overrepresented in homelessness, particularly older women, young women in violence and abuse, domestic violence, poverty in general. Single parents are clearly one of our most disadvantaged groups of people socioeconomically, and that then leads to child poverty. So women are really not doing too well across the country as far as the being overrepresented in areas of disadvantage and vulnerability. So from the community services perspective, we work, we're there with women. We're there with communities every day. We're there doing the work we do, women to women, men to women, really trying to ameliorate the situations that they're in individually and as families and communities. And then from a national perspective, we take all of that experience and then we advocate about the policies and the structural barriers that women face in our community. If you are a migrant woman or a woman from a First Nations woman, you're even up against it even more.
Yeah.
So if you put that gender lens on and then you put the cultural lens on, we are really doing very badly. So we really advocate for that. And last year, I brought the letter with me because I'd forgotten about it. But last year with COVID, of course, there was a fair amount of discussion around the women and how badly they will do post-COVID.
Yes.
And that women were really going to be left behind, both in work, in the work world, and in, as I said, all of those other kind of aspects of life. And so the Uniting Church, as a whole group of our leaders, got together and wrote to the Prime Minister and to the... I'll read it out. I won't read the whole letter, it's all right. But this was all of us, and we all signed that letter with a number of our service agency CEOs and leaders, and many of our moderators and other, our president and yourself, Colleen, just to raise the issue of support of a gender equal recovery.
Yeah.
And so that was a really important thing for us as a church to do because of our commitment to women. And so we just asked for an investment in the care economy, investment in childcare and early childhood education, family payments to pay attention to those, particularly payments for single parent families, investment in domestic and family violence support, increased financial support to unpaid carers at home, because women are bearing the majority of the burden of unpaid care as well, both for children and for their older relatives or friends. The personal tax cuts that are gender neutral, so the issue of superannuation and income tax also has an impact on women, and overseas development funding to invest in programs that specifically support women and girls. So we wrote to the PM about that.
It's such but it's such a really important piece that I think a lot of people actually don't understand the difference that the church is actually making for women and with women. So I'm really I'm so grateful that you've shared that. And it is beautiful that we're trying to make it a better place for women as well as include women in that.
Well, given that women are half the population, there's a bit of a problem there when you think about it, in the way that in all of the statistics that women are really behind the eight ball.
Yep.
Many in every area of life really, and not included. It's easy for us. I'm a privileged white woman. Easy for me, but many women in our communities are really not sharing equally, sharing half of the benefits of our and the prosperity of our economy and the prosperity of our community and our society. So we are committed to that as a church.
Thank you. From all of us, thank you.
It's not just me. it's all of us.
Yeah, completely.
It's all of us.
So thank you so much, Claire. And now that kind of leads me into talking about some of the incredible stuff that Soroka is doing with Uniting World, and the role that you and your teams are playing in the developing countries, and the importance of including women in programming and in funding. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
I was just thinking, as I think Clauwen articulated very clearly what the issue around the imbalance of power and privilege between men and women, and obviously that's true universally. It's really interesting because all of us have this mindset about marginalised minority groups, and there are plenty of those. But obviously the big deal is that women are not a minority group. We are half the population. So marginalising half your population, it has a pretty significant impact.
Exactly. When you put it like that, yeah.
So it's interesting because if you look at sort of Uniting World, we're the Uniting Churches International Partnerships and Aid Agency, and we work in primarily Asia and the Pacific, but also a couple of partners in Africa. And we work with our partner churches to work with them on creating basically fighting injustice and poverty in their context. So that's what we do at a high level. And in sort of socioeconomic development, there isn't a magic bullet. There is no one single thing that's going to fix the problem of poverty or inequality. But the closest thing we have to the magic bullet is the empowerment of women and girls. Mm-hmm. Because honestly, if you've only got one lever you can pull, that's the lever you pull, right? Yeah. Because its knock-on effects on basically improving the quality of life for a community, there is nothing else that comes as close as the empowering of women and girls. And it's really interesting because there's been a lot of work done around how we as humanity fight climate change. Yeah. And there's been a fantastic book written called Drawdown, it's actually on our website, which is basically pulling together all of the research to say, look, the problem with addressing climate change is not that we don't have the technology, it's that we don't have the political will. In fact, we actually have all of the things we need to do are already present, we just need to do them. Yeah. And what do you think they name as the single biggest lever you can pull to affect climate change?
Oh, go on.
It's the empowering of women and girls.
There you go.
So
there must be something in it.
There must be something in it, right? I think most people would be aware of the fact that women, because they hold caring responsibilities, nurturing, child rearing, looking after the elderly, because they carry so much of that social responsibility, but then have so little socioeconomic power, fixing that power imbalance fixes a lot of the other ways in which people are disadvantaged. Yeah. But what we do is, I think, peculiarly interesting, for today is because we work with churches, and it's the role that churches play and the importance of the role that churches play. Because in a lot of places where we work, especially in the Pacific, the church is still the most powerful and most influential civil society organisation there is. So people actually take their cultural and sort of moral guidance from the teachings of the church. Sadly, not so in Australia, so supporting and encouraging churches to actively teach and model equality of women and respect for women, and be open about condemning domestic violence, and having their leaders equipped to respond to violence in the community is a really critical role that churches can play. Mm-hmm. The other role, of course, they play is the modelling of women in leadership. And so we work with our partner churches to fund and support this work that they do, and they do it all based on biblical teaching that God created men and women to be equal, and that they have, and flourishing requires everybody to have a role in it. And coming back to the Uniting Church, it's kind of, again, quite exciting because churches who've always had male leadership are a bit sort of nervous about what happens to them when they put women in leadership roles. Yeah. And it's always really, really great when when I can take out a woman moderator or a woman president and sort of, take them round. So it's wonderful that the Uniting Church can model for our partner churches that we don't self-destruct if we put women in leadership. Anyway.
So then I guess all of us then thinking about what does happen to communities when you empower women. What do you think? I certainly have worked in a lot of different organisations and corporate organisations, and the one very fundamental difference that I've noticed in having, you look around the table here and there are, 4 women leaders, the difference for me has been around culture. It feels much more heart-led leadership than in other organisations that I've worked with for, but how do you think it actually makes a difference in communities and for organisations?
Well, I think in organisations, I've worked in organisations that are led by both women and men that have been good. But I see in women a willingness to maybe think outside the box sometimes, and to try new things, or to think what could happen that's not the same. We don't have to always hold to the same way we did things. Things could be a little different. We can dream what the future might look like that is a bit different, or, just to flip a problem on its head and see what a solution could bring, you know, from a different perspective. And, you know, and I think that's always helpful. Sometimes it's tricky, of course, because an organisation has to be willing to go with you on that. But that perspective, I think, is key, and we do see that with women leaders in organisations. That's for sure.
And I mean, I think we are natural collaborators as well, and I think that as a leadership style bodes very well for an organisation, or particular and a community, of course. But you know, we do collaborate kind of more naturally. We're not as competitive in the way that we lead or that we kind of work. So I mean, I think that, you know, I've been privileged to work with a lot of great women, and we've got stuff done. we do stuff, and we are able to just forge ahead collaboratively and almost naturally working together in that way. So I think that's a great gift in some ways. I think when you're working with women, you know, and it's a great gift to an organisation if you are collaborative. If anyone's collaborative, it's the way that you get stuff done. And in communities, I mean, I've worked in many, you know, quite disadvantaged communities in housing estates, etc. And it's the women of those communities who are the glue. They're the ones who, as I say, looking after the children. They're doing the caring roles. Often don't have work. We need to find a way of economic justice for those women, but also they are the ones in the communities who can actually get stuff done, provide whatever tools people need to be able to get done for their own families or for their communities what needs to be done.
I was thinking about this because for me it was a big shock to start working with women, because I'm a scientist by training and spent most of my career in the technology sector. So worked mostly with engineers and physicists, most of whom were men. So by the time I sort of got to executive or senior leadership roles, you know, I'd be lucky if the head of HR was a woman. But very few other people in the executive team would be. And to come from that kind of, and because it's the tech sector, it's a very left-brained, very different sort of mode of, you know, you don't win an argument unless you've got a graph on your side sort of environment. And coming into the sort of the humanitarian sector and suddenly being immersed with so many women, for me it was a huge blessing, just that different kind of vibe. But it was also a learning around the way women work together being quite different. Absolutely what you were saying, Claire, is that building consensus is actually quite a big deal for us. Like we don't like to go out and stick our heads entirely on our own, so we're very often builders of coalitions to try and get something through. It's not about getting to the meeting and having the loudest voice and the strongest argument. It's about how you prep everybody before the meeting so that everyone's sort of, you take people with you. But also, I think particularly last year with COVID, one of the things I realised I was so grateful for is that in a year of incredible stress and change and anxiety and fear, what the absolute essential part of how we survived, and not just survived, but actually did really well in terms of how we stood with our partners to help them survive, was if you look after your people, everything else looks after itself. And to have a work environment in which that collaborative, collegiate, but also the caring, the high levels of emotional intelligence and the checking in on people and all of that stuff, which for me was exemplified in that last year. And it's the reason why, you know, we've actually had an amazing year despite the horror of it all. And I do put that down to a culture and a tone of genuine caring for people, and that wanting, even though we were all living in our own suburban houses with behind Zoom windows, that keeping those communication things up and whatever, for me that felt like it was greatly abetted by having so many strong women in my team who led that. So I think culturally it makes a shift. I do think, though, our sector has to be a little careful because we are so women-heavy about how we are genuinely inclusive of men and are aware and sensitive about it.
Completely. The community sector, I mean, I've worked in the community sector for very, very long, well, all my career, my whole life, really. and it's always been women around the table. So it's really interesting to have your experience. I haven't had that experience really of having. I've had a little bit, but not. So it's always been. There's always been a sense of building consensus, getting on, trying to get things done. And when marketisation of the community sector and community services has come along, it's been a different experience for some. So it's a really interesting thing about how the sector has kind of grown because we are very much about women around the table. I don't think it's not being. I've not really experienced the being exclusive. It's just that is the way it has been. That there happen to be women around the table because we're in caring. It's a caring profession, I guess.
I don't know if your experience has been similar, Claire, but certainly in the community services sector, what I noticed when I started early was there were lots of women on the front line. But as I kind of moved into senior leadership and management, as soon as I got to a board level and CEO level, that switched substantially in terms of the gender diversity. I don't know whether that's been your experience or not.
I think it's very segmented.
Yeah.
So many of our boards have really strong women chairs now. I can think of many of our boards. The child and family sector, the community sector, and the early childhood sector have had many women in leadership and on boards. In other sectors like aged care, etc., it's been a different sort of thing. So I think it's really quite patchy.
Yeah.
I think it's been there has been. I mean, I think I agree with you. There's been a lot of. In the past that's happened. I think that's kind of changing.
I agree with you. I think it is shifting.
Yeah, where there's and I think that's been intentional as well.
I mentioned it because I read just recently the ASX report where in COVID a number of the top corporately listed organisations have done a significant shift back to men with MBAs. Which I thought was an interesting reaction. I don't know whether it is across the board or not, but certainly that was one of the.
Well, there's always. I mean, the AICD and others are doing a lot of work on trying to get women. Yeah. Certainly, there's the concept of women on boards is a really important. There's had to be a very proactive push to try and get that balance because there's been a big dearth of that right across the board for a long time.
And that's the thing that I have noticed coming into the Uniting Church, which is starkly, and it may not be because you've been in it for 30 years, but certainly for me, I've only been in it for just over four, is that it is actually a stark difference, is the number of women that are in leadership and on the boards and it is actually, for me, it was a bit of a culture shock, having come from other organisations which were predominantly male in terms of their leadership.
And I mean there was that 30% way back then, wasn't there?
Yeah, so that's right.
Did that
Excuse me.
set the mark in some ways?
Well, it did, and interestingly, not long after that, some years after that, when the Commission on Women and Men was at the Assembly level, they did a survey right across the church to look at the gender balance in committees and councils and congregational.
We should do
councils.
another one of those.
Yes.
Well,
But what was
I think that's
fascinating,
true.
what was fascinating about it, because when I went into the job in that area, that was on my desk, right? Was that when you looked at the numbers, say if it was in a congregation, 80% of the membership would be women. This is randomly telling you that this was kind of a general trend. If 80% were women and 20% were men in a congregation, then on the council, on the congregational council, whatever it was called at the time, it was inverted. So the leadership was 80% men, 20% women.
Wow.
And I think we've seen that change over time since that was done. And it would be interesting to see where we are today. But
it has to be intentional, though, doesn't it?
It does have to be.
We've got to be intentional about this, like you say. You've got to kind of keep your eye on it, on the ball.
It's a eternal vigilance. That's what we need.
I think too that's kind of gone with the growth in our, realising the importance of diversity.
Yeah.
in general as well.
Exactly.
So, gender balance is absolutely key because of what we've discussed previously and the difference that women make. But that kind of opening ourselves up to even more what we could be with, true diversity being understood, across, and, the Uniting Church is amazing in that. So how do we see that in our leadership roles? How do we see that in other places as well?
Yeah.
Well, I think one final question, which is about how then do we, as senior leaders, how do we go forward and pave the way for new women coming through? What piece of advice do you think would be helpful for young and emerging leaders or aspiring young women in order for them to feel that they're supported and included? What would be your piece of advice for them?
I had a few little points that I put down on this one.
All
You go first then.
Well, they were just 4 really.
Yeah.
Listen and learn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Find your champions.
Yeah.
So seek out those people that will champion you. Be true to yourself.
Definitely.
Always be true to yourself.
Yeah.
And your passion.
Yes.
And never give up.
That's beautiful.
Very good.
Just, there's probably lots of others, but they were just things that came to mind.
I like it.
I can add one thing to the thing I was thinking of is I had a lovely young woman who worked for us till quite recently. She went off to do exciting things, but she had a T-shirt which used to crack me up every time, and it said, "Dear Lord, give me the confidence of a mediocre man." It just it's not to disparage men, but women, I think there's been plenty of research that shows that the level of competence that women in general feel like they need to have before they will step into positions of leadership or offer themselves as leaders is a much higher threshold. Apparently, men will apply for a job if they meet 10 to 15% of the selection criteria of a job, and women won't apply till they've got over 90.
Right.
So what I would say to young women is, honestly, if you see an opening where you think there's a need and you have an idea of how to fix it, just step up and,
Just do it.
just do it. Just do not let there be a leader. I mean, and this is encouragement for leadership. Just, go after it.
Yeah.
And obviously, you won't know everything. You won't have everything it takes. But that's what you're good at, is pulling together a group of people who can help you get stuff done, right?
And that's where you
Yeah,
find your
exactly.
champions. So you find
Yeah.
the
That's
people
right.
around you who are going to support
That's
you.
right. You
and
don't
nurture
have
you
to
in
know
that.
everything. Just step in and then build a coalition that'll help you get the stuff done.
Yeah.
But just don't sit around waiting till you've got everything nailed before you offer yourself up into something. So I'd just say confidence, yeah.
I like all that they said,
Yes.
obviously, and agree with it. And so I'd like to just add one thing to
Yeah.
those important things. And it's not advice to emerging leaders, it's advice to us. And, sometimes I think people in organisations and in the church, they get so set in their ways, or they're so comfortable in their positions, they don't kind of look at what's in the future. And so for up-and-coming women leaders in the church, they might look and go, oh, well, they've been in their roles for how many years, and that's just how it's going to be, and where am I going to find a place? And I think for us as leaders, it's also important for us to go, who's coming?
Yeah,
That's right. Who's got the passion for the church for the future, who'll take us where maybe we can't because we have our ways, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think there is a place for us to think of ourselves in that kind of transition space and to give advice to us to go, is it time for us to step away?
Absolutely.
And to let that passion just flow through and just be amazing for us for the future.
Yeah. So if there are any women, young women leaders out there who want our jobs, just let us know.
Please,
Yes.
you can have it.
And we will embrace
Mentor
you.
you.
We will embrace you.
Absolutely.
Well,
What about you? Do you
I
got
think,
some advice?
I think the best piece of advice is be brave, be weird. So embrace your own self. Ask questions. Be vulnerable. The more questions that you ask, the quicker you learn. And for me, I think those are the things that by remaining authentic to who you are, you actually are a better leader.
Yeah.
Don't try and emulate someone else or emulate others. The closer you can be to your own authentic self, the better a leader you'll actually be, because it comes across as authentic and genuine. And hopefully everyone else that's watched this will understand why this is an incredible place to be, work, come involved. Some pretty amazing women.
And we get stuff done.
Yes! That's right.
We do get stuff done. I think the other thing for me is just
Yeah.
is to think about our girls, not just
Yes.
our women, but
Yeah.
to think about our girls. And you know, when we were talking before about, you know, there are many girls who are really needing to be nurtured. So how do we nurture our girls from very young?
Yeah.
So they are able to be strong and they are able to be the people they want to be, and how do we put all of the structures around them, both in society and the economy and in their families and their communities, that they can actually come up, because they are our next generation.
Yeah, beautiful. I just wanted to touch a little tiny bit, because it's taken me a long time to understand strong, that word strong. So as a leader, and having strength, I thought was emulating masculinity in terms of having strength. And I think what I have learned and discovered is the vulnerability strength that comes from care and compassion. Is okay as a leader to have care and compassion for others. It doesn't have to be a hard front all the time. And that's the thing that I've actually, to be honest, I've only really discovered in myself recently. It's not something that I've always done or learned how to embrace. So it is actually okay.
I just wanted to
Yes,
add one
go.
thing. Just as a parent of a son, I feel like we need to nurture our boys
Yes, we do.
to deal
Absolutely.
with this as well,
We do.
because I think that a lot of what can get in the way of women is men or
Is other
boys who
attitudes towards women.
Exactly.
That's right.
And I think it's actually as important to get our
Yeah.
boys to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I just remember my
I
little
agree.
boy joining. He was a scout, and his first patrol leader was a woman. Was a woman. She was a girl. She was 13. But he was a 12-year-old kid. And the fact that he could see a highly competent, capable girl leading a patrol, and not just doing, like they'd go bushwalking and she'd whack up the tents and tell them, order all the kids what to do and everything, that for him it became a perfectly, there was never an issue about having a leader who was a woman and trusting and having confidence. And I just love the fact that, we nurture our boys to not bat an eyelid, not be surprised or whatever is.
I think,
yeah.
and I think that absolutely, if we
Yeah.
want to eliminate violence against women, violence against girls, if we want to have a society where everyone respects each other, no matter, and we're talking, we are talking binaries here as well.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
with anyone, we need to find a society that respects all people for who they are.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to nurture all our children
Exactly.
from day one, really,
That's right.
to become respectful.
Exactly. Our boys need
peaceful
to smash the
human beings.
patriarchy just as much as our girls
Yeah,
do.
sounds good.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, and thank you so much for talking about International Women's Day and why it's important to all of us. I'm hoping that everyone that's watched this might have taken away something interesting, inspiring, and made them hopefully want to come and work for the Uniting Church.
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Janine.
Thanks, Janine.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Christy.